Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your stack of sources and extract the pure gold, the insights that really matter. Today, we're diving deep into the world of cybersecurity. We'll be exploring 25 practical questions and answers from a CISM, that's Certified Information Security Manager, practice test.
We're going beyond kind of like the headlines and acronyms to, really understand how those security decisions are made, how risks are managed, and how security programs are built.
We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 1 asks, which of the following best describes information security governance? It seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, you'd think so, but this question really highlights a very crucial distinction. It's not just about setting policies, it's about having, management actively steer that entire security process. Imagine, like, captaining a ship, right? You don't just chart a course and hope for the best. You need someone at the helm, constantly adjusting to the changing conditions, making sure everyone's working together to reach the destination safely.
So it's not enough to just have like a security policy document. You need to make sure that it's actually being, implemented and followed effectively.
Exactly. It's about having that continuous oversight, making sure security is really embedded in the organization's DNA.
Okay. So question 2 gets a little bit into the practical side of things.
Yeah.
What is the best method for ensuring that an organization's security program achieves adequate business alignment? So in other words, how do we make sure security isn't just a tech thing, but it actually supports the goals of the business?
The key here is understanding the bigger picture. The answer, it emphasizes the need to really dive into that organization's vision, their mission statement, and objectives. Security needs to be woven into the fabric of what the company is trying to achieve. It shouldn't be seen as a separate department, kind of off doing its own thing. Think of it like you wouldn't build a car without considering how the engine, the transmission, and the brakes, how they all work together, right?
So security can't be the bottleneck, right? Holding back innovation or slowing down business operations.
Exactly. It needs to be an enabler, right? Supporting the business while still, of course, managing risk effectively.
So question 3 follows up on this idea. Robert has located his organization's mission statement and a list of strategic objectives. What steps should Robert take to ensure that the information security program aligns with the business?
This is where communication really becomes super critical. The answer emphasizes, the importance of Robert discussing these strategic objectives with business leaders, understanding their priorities and finding ways to align security measures with those goals.
So it's about building relationships, fostering open dialogue and making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Precisely. Cybersecurity, it's not a solo mission. It's a team sport.
All right. Question 4 introduces a new concept. What exactly is a risk appetite statement?
So think of it like this. You're setting those boundaries for how much risk an organization is willing to accept. This policy, it helps management make consistent decisions about which risks are acceptable and which ones need to be mitigated. For example, a startup might have a higher risk appetite than, let's say, a financial institution.
So it's like saying, we're okay with this level of risk, but anything beyond that is a no-go.
Exactly. It provides that framework for making informed decisions about risk, helps avoid those knee-jerk reactions based on fear or the latest headlines.
Makes a lot of sense. Moving on to question 5. In a risk management process, who is the best person to make a risk treatment decision? I'm guessing the Chief Information Security Officer, right?
It's tempting to say that, but the answer here, it highlights a really important point. The best person to make that call is the process owner who is the most familiar with that specific risk. While the CISO, they provide guidance and expertise, the decision should ultimately lie with the person who understands the potential impact on the ground level.
So it's about empowering those on the front lines, right, to make those informed decisions based on their knowledge and their experience.
Exactly. It's a very collaborative approach, recognizing that, different people, they have different pieces of the puzzle when it comes to, understanding risk.
Now, question 6 tackles a big one. The ultimate responsibility for an organization's cybersecurity program lies with whom? This has to be the CSO, right?
This one might surprise you. The answer is actually the Chief Executive Officer, or CEO. Ultimately, cybersecurity is a business risk, and the CEO is, accountable for managing all risks to the organization.
Wow. So it really emphasizes that cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, it's a core business concern at the highest level.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility, but ultimately, the buck stops at the CEO's desk.
Okay, on to question 7. In a U.S. public company, a CISO will generally report the state of the organization's cybersecurity program to
Whom? The answer here is the audit committee of the board of directors. This underscores the importance of transparency and accountability when it comes to cybersecurity.
So it's not just a technical report buried somewhere. It's actually being presented to those who govern the company.
Exactly. It's a big deal.
Okay. Question 8 presents us with a scenario. A new CISO in an organization is building its cybersecurity program from the ground up. To ensure collaboration among business leaders and department heads, what should the CISO do?
Collaboration is key. The answer here suggests forming a cybersecurity steering committee. This brings together people from different parts of the organization, to provide input, to share perspectives, and make sure that security aligns with those business needs.
So it's about creating that forum, right, for open dialogue and collaboration rather than just dictating security measures from the top down.
Exactly. It's about building consensus, getting buy-in from all those stakeholders.
Question 9 circles back to risk. Who is the best person or group to make cyber risk treatment decisions? We've talked about risk appetite, but who actually makes the call on how to handle specific risks?
The answer points back to that cybersecurity steering committee we just discussed. Remember, this group brings together those diverse perspectives, so they're really the best equipped to weigh the pros and cons and make those informed decisions.
So it's back to that collaborative approach, recognizing that no single person has all the answers when it comes to managing risk.
Precisely. It's about bringing together the right people with the right expertise to make the best decisions for the organization as a whole.
Question 10 gets into some of the details. Which is the best party to conduct access reviews? In other words, who should be checking to make sure that people only have access to the systems they need?
This one might surprise you. The answer is the department head. They're really in the best position to know who needs access to what based on, their team's roles and responsibilities.
So it's not just an IT function. It's about ensuring that the right people have access to the right information to do their jobs effectively.
It does. It's about aligning security with those business needs, not creating unnecessary roadblocks.
Question 11 tackles applications. Which is the best party to make decisions about the purpose and function of business applications? Is this an IT call or something broader?
Again, it goes beyond just IT. The answer is the business department head. They understand those business processes, the workflows, and what the application really needs to accomplish.
So IT might build and support the application, but the business owns the why behind it.
Exactly. It's about making sure technology serves the needs of the business, not the other way around.
Okay. Question 12 introduces a formal-sounding concept. Which of the following is the best definition of custodial responsibility? What does that actually mean in a practical sense?
It's all about safeguarding assets, but with a specific twist. The answer here highlights that the custodian protects assets based on the customer's, defined interests.
So it's not just about keeping things safe in general. It's about protecting them according to the specific needs and requirements of the owner.
Exactly. Think of it, like a museum curator. They're responsible for protecting those artifacts, not just based on their own, personal preferences, but according to the museum's guidelines and the historical significance of those objects.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, question 13 zooms out to the bigger picture. An organization has a process whereby security-related hazards are identified, followed by analysis and decisions about what to do about these hazards. What kind of a business process is this? Sounds kind of familiar, right?
It should. The answer is risk management. This question, it just highlights those core elements of a good risk management process. Identifying those hazards, analyzing their potential impact, and then deciding how to handle them.
So it's that continuous cycle of assess, analyze, and act that we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's a structured way of approaching cybersecurity that goes beyond just reacting to threats as they pop up.
Question 14 asks, what is the purpose of a cyber risk management program in an organization? What's the ultimate goal of all this risk management effort?
The answer is pretty clear here. It's to identify and make informed decisions about information security risks. It's not just about checking boxes or creating paperwork. It's about taking action to protect the organization.
So it's about turning that theoretical risk assessment into concrete actions that actually reduce the likelihood or impact of, a security incident.
Exactly. It's about moving from analysis to action and making sure those actions are aligned with the organization's, overall goals and their risk tolerance.
All right. Question 15 throws us a bit of a curveball here. All of the following activities are typical inputs into a risk management process, except which one?
This one is about recognizing what doesn't belong. While code reviews are definitely important for secure software development, they're not typically a direct input into that broader risk management process.
So risk management is focused on that bigger picture, the overall security posture, rather than those granular details of individual code.
Exactly. It's about understanding that landscape of threats and vulnerabilities, not just focusing on those specific technical issues.
Question 16 asks about strategy. What should be the primary objective of a risk management strategy? What's the main goal here?
The answer emphasizes that it's all about identifying and reducing credible risks to an acceptable level. It's not about eliminating all risk, which is often impossible, but about understanding what risks we face and bringing them down to a manageable level.
So finding that balance between security and practicality, right? Where we're protected, but not paralyzed by fear.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between risk and reward and making sure those security efforts are, proportionate to the potential impact.
Okay. Question 17 digs into that next step. What are possible outcomes of a risk that has been identified and analyzed in a risk management process?
The answer outlines a range of options here. Acceptance, avoidance, mitigation, and transfer. This really highlights the flexibility of risk management. There's not always a one-size-fits-all solution.
So we could choose to accept the risk, avoid it altogether, try to reduce its impact, or even shift the responsibility to someone else.
Precisely. The key is to choose the option that best aligns with the organization's risk appetite and their overall strategy.
Question 18 brings back our friend Dawn, the CSO. Dawn, a new CSO in a pharmaceutical company, is reviewing an existing risk management process. The process states that the CSO alone makes all risk treatment decisions. What should Dawn conclude from this observation?
This raises a red flag because the answer here suggests that Dawn should change that process to be more collaborative. Risk decisions shouldn't be made in a vacuum. They need input from those different stakeholders.
So even though the CSO is the security expert, they shouldn't be making those unilateral decisions without considering other perspectives.
Exactly. Risk management is a team sport, and it requires input from people across the organization to be truly effective.
All right. Question 19 focuses on process. Marie, a CSO at a manufacturing company, is building a new cyber risk governance process. For this process to be successful, what is the best first step for Marie to take?
Collaboration is key right from the start. The answer is to assemble that security steering committee, consisting of IT, security, and business leaders. This ensures everyone has a voice and is invested in the outcome from day one.
So it's about setting the stage for successful risk governance by making sure everyone has a voice and is invested in the outcome.
Precisely. You can't build a secure foundation without input from all those stakeholders.
Question 20 tackles communication. To what audience should communication about new information risks be sent? Who needs to be in the loop when new risks emerge?
The answer might surprise you. It's all personnel. This highlights that everyone in the organization plays a role in managing risk.
So it's not just about forming the IT team or the security experts. It's about making sure everyone is aware of the risks and knows how to play their part in protecting the organization.
Precisely. Security awareness and training are crucial components of any effective cybersecurity program.
Okay, question 21 brings up compliance. An organization's internal audit department is assessing the organization's compliance with PCI DSS. Internal audit finds that the organization is not compliant with a PCI DSS control regarding workers' annual acknowledgement of security policy. What kind of risk has been identified?
This one falls squarely under compliance risk. The question highlights the potential consequences of failing to meet those regulatory requirements.
So it's not just about following the rules for the sake of it. It's about understanding that non-compliance can have real-world consequences for the organization.
Absolutely. Compliance failures can lead to fines, penalties, reputational damage, and even legal action. No one wants that.
Question 22 deals with the aftermath of an audit. An internal audit team has completed a comprehensive internal audit and has determined that several controls are ineffective. What is the next step that should be performed?
The answer is to perform a risk assessment. This helps prioritize those remediation efforts by determining the potential impact of those ineffective controls. It's like, a doctor figuring out which symptom needs immediate attention and which can wait a bit.
So it's not enough to just identify the problems. You have to understand how serious they are and what needs to be fixed first.
Exactly. It's about taking a risk-based approach to remediation, just like that doctor triaging patients in the ER.
Question 23 tackles frameworks. Which of the following statements is correct regarding applicable regulation and the selection of a security controls framework? So how do we choose the right framework for our organization?
The key is alignment. The answer explains that an appropriate framework will make it easier to map those regulatory details to the required activities.
So it's about finding a framework that helps us meet our compliance obligations in a structured and efficient way.
Exactly. It's like using a blueprint to build a house. The framework provides that roadmap for implementing those effective security controls that meet both industry standards and those regulatory requirements.
Question 24 introduces a new acronym, FAIR, which stands for Factor Analysis of Information Risk. The question asks, in the use of FAIR, how does a risk manager determine the potential types of loss?
This might sound complex, but the answer is pretty straightforward. Those loss types are actually defined by the FAIR method itself. FAIR provides that structured framework for analyzing risk, including a predefined set of loss types to consider.
So it's a way of, standardizing the risk assessment process and making sure we're not overlooking any potential consequences of a security incident.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone is speaking the same language when it comes to risk.
And finally, question 25 brings back Dawn, our CISO friend. Dawn, a CISO in a pharmaceutical organization, is partnering with the company's legal department on the topic of new applicable regulations. Which of the following approaches is most likely to be successful?
The answer highlights the importance of a systematic approach. Dawn and the legal team should examine each new regulation, determine if it applies to the organization, and if so, analyze its potential impact.
So it's about being proactive and strategic about compliance, rather than just scrambling to react to new regulations as they come along.
Precisely. It's about staying ahead of the curve and making sure the organization is prepared for whatever comes next. It's like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Speaking of prevention, question 26 takes us to the very beginning of a risk assessment.
It asks, what steps must be completed prior to the start of a risk assessment in an organization? What groundwork needs to be laid before we even start digging into those details?
The answer, it emphasizes the importance of, clarity and scope. Before diving in, we absolutely need to define the scope, the purpose, and the criteria for that assessment. It's like setting the boundaries for a research project, right? What are we looking at? Why are we looking at it? And how will we measure success?
So it's about making sure everyone understands, what's being assessed, why it's being assessed, and what standards will be used to, measure risk.
Exactly. That clarity is crucial for a focused and effective risk assessment. Otherwise, you risk, going down those rabbit holes and missing the big picture.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, question 27 gets a little bit into the politics of risk management. A risk manager recently completed a risk assessment in an organization. Executive management asked the risk manager to remove one of the findings from the final report. This removal is an example of what? Sounds a bit shady to me.
It definitely raises some red flags. The answer is gerrymandering, which might sound familiar from the world of politics, right? It's all about manipulating boundaries to achieve a desired outcome.
So in this case, they're trying to manipulate the findings to, downplay the organization's true risk profile.
Exactly. It's essentially trying to sweep a problem under the rug instead of addressing it head on, and that can have serious consequences down the line.
Let's hope our risk manager has the courage to, push back on that request. Okay, question 28 takes us back to vulnerability management. Revila is a new CISO in a healthcare organization. During strategy development, Revila found that IT system administrators apply security patches when the security team sends them those quarterly vulnerability scan reports. What is the most effective change that can be made in the vulnerability management process to make it more proactive versus reactive? So how can Revila get ahead of that patching game?
The answer focuses on establishing a clear and consistent process. Instead of waiting for a vulnerability scan to, reveal those problems, organizations should have a defined patching schedule based on the severity of known vulnerabilities. Those quarterly scans can then serve as like a quality assurance check, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks.
So it's about shifting from a reactive approach, where we're scrambling to fix those problems after they're discovered, to a proactive approach, where we're anticipating vulnerabilities and patching them before they can be exploited.
Precisely. It's like getting those regular checkups at the doctor instead of waiting until you're already sick to seek treatment.
Question 29 highlights a common challenge in today's world. An organization has outsourced most of its business applications and IT operations to software as a service, SaaS providers, and other service providers. Currently, the organization has no master list of service providers. Instead, IT, legal, procurement, and security have separate lists that are not in alignment. What is the first step that should take place?
This is all about getting organized and creating a single source of truth. The first step is to gather all those separate lists from IT, legal, procurement, and security and consolidate them into a master list of service providers. It might seem simple, but it's a critical foundation for, managing third-party risk effectively.
Yeah, it's about having that clear visibility into who you're doing business with and, what security practices they have in place.
Exactly. You can't manage what you can't measure, as they say.
Question 30 puts us right in the middle of budget season. An organization, CISO, is planning for the cybersecurity budget for the following year. One of the security analysts informed the CISO that she should add more licenses to the vulnerability scanning tool so that all of the organization's networks can be scanned. Currently, there are only enough licenses to scan the primary on-premises data center, but not the secondary data center, office networks, or external-facing assets. How should the CISO respond to this request? This feels like a classic wants versus needs scenario, right? How do we balance security needs with those budget constraints?
This one's interesting because it highlights the need to really understand the capabilities of your tools. The answer suggests acquiring licenses for the secondary data center, but not necessarily for all those networks.
Really? I'm a bit surprised by that. Why not just scan everything?
Yeah. Because the vulnerability scanner, it likely has the capacity to scan all those networks even without those additional licenses. It just won't maintain those detailed records for them due to the limitations. So you're still getting some level of visibility across all your assets, even without, blowing the budget on licenses for every single device.
So it's about making those strategic decisions and finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between comprehensiveness and cost-effectiveness.
Exactly. Sometimes you can achieve a good level of security without, going all in on every single feature or tool.
Question 31 takes us into the world of software development. A global manufacturing organization has decided to develop a SaaS solution in support of one of its products. What security-related resources will need to be acquired in support of this new endeavor? Building secure software requires specialized tools and expertise, right?
Absolutely. The answer highlights a few key things: secure coding training for developers, DAST and SaaS tools for testing, and a web application firewall for protection. It's a multi-layered approach to, baking security into that software development lifecycle.
So we're training our developers to write secure code from the start, using tools to automatically scan for vulnerabilities, and then putting up a firewall to protect the application from those attacks once it's deployed.
Precisely. It's about thinking about security at every stage of that process, not just bolting it on at the end.
Makes sense. Question 32 asks, an organization has decided to improve its information security program by developing a full suite of policies, procedures, standards, and processes. Which of these must be developed first?
The answer is pretty clear: policies. Think of them as the foundation, those guiding principles that set the overall direction for cybersecurity within the organization. Everything else really flows from those policies.
So they're like the constitution of our security program, right? Laying out the high-level rules and expectations.
Exactly. You need that strong foundation before you can start building the rest of the house.
Question 33 gets into the details. What kind of statement is the following? Passwords are to consist of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and are to be at least 12 characters in length. This sounds like, a password policy, but what kind of document would it typically live in?
That would be a standard. Standards provide those specific requirements and guidelines for implementing those high-level policies we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So the policy might say passwords must be strong, and the standard provides the detailed criteria for what constitutes strong in this organization.
So policies set the direction, and standards provide the detailed instructions on how to get there.
Precisely. Think of it as the difference between a recipe book and a specific recipe, right? The recipe book gives you those general guidelines, but the recipe provides those precise measurements and instructions you need to follow.
Question 34 asks about security awareness training. What is the purpose of developing security awareness content in various forms? Why not just stick to one format for training?
The answer here highlights that, people learn in different ways. Some folks might prefer reading documents, others might learn better by watching videos, and still, others might need those hands-on interactive exercises. The key is to cater to those different learning styles and make sure that message really resonates with everyone.
It's like teaching any subject you need to engage people in a way that makes sense to them. Okay, question 35 takes us into the world of mergers and acquisitions. The CISO in a venture capital firm wants the firm's acquisition process to include a cybersecurity risk assessment prior to the acquisition of a new company, not after the acquisition, as has been done in the past. What is the best reason for this change?
This is all about due diligence. By conducting a security risk assessment before the acquisition, the firm can uncover any potential cybersecurity risks that might impact the valuation of that company. It's like getting a home inspection before you buy a house. You want to know about any potential problems before you sign on the dotted line.
So it's not just about protecting yourself from, inheriting someone else's security problems. It's about making informed decisions about the deal itself.
Exactly. Cybersecurity risks can significantly impact a company's value, so it's crucial to factor them into that acquisition decision-making process.
Question 36 continues that M&A theme. What is the purpose of sending security questionnaires to third parties at the start of the due diligence process?
It's all about understanding the third party's security posture early on. By sending out those questionnaires, you can identify potential risks and address them during those contract negotiations. It's about being proactive and making sure security is baked into that agreement from the get-go.
So it's kind of like those pre-screening questions you get asked before a job interview, right? They're trying to get a sense of whether you're a good fit before they invest more time and resources.
That's a great analogy. It's all about gathering information up front so you can make those informed decisions.
Question 37 is all about metrics. A CISO has developed and is publishing a new metric entitled Percentage of Patches Applied Within SLAs to Servers Supporting Manufacturing. What message does this metric convey to those executives?
This metric, it translates a technical concept into something executives can really understand business impact. It highlights the risk of security incidents that could disrupt those manufacturing operations. If those servers aren't patched on time, it could lead to, downtime, production delays, lost revenue.
So it's about connecting those dots, right? Between security metrics and the things executives really care about,
Yeah.
like keeping the business running smoothly.
Exactly. You need to speak their language if you want them to understand the importance of cybersecurity.
Question 38 asks about reporting to the board of directors. Which of the following reports is most appropriate to send to a board of directors? What kind of information do they need?
Boards of directors are busy people, so you need to give them that high-level overview without overwhelming them with the technical details. The answer suggests providing, quarterly high-level metrics along with a summary of any significant security incidents that have occurred.
So we're giving them the key takeaways without bogging them down with those vulnerability scans and technical jargon.
Exactly. They need the information that will help them make those strategic decisions about cybersecurity, not the minutia of, day-to-day operations.
Question 39 takes us into the cloud. What is the best solution for protecting a SaaS application from a Layer 7 attack? Now, I know we talked about layers briefly earlier, but can you remind me what a Layer 7 attack is?
Of course. Think of it this way. Network communication is broken down into those different layers, kind of like the floors of a building. Layer 7 is that top floor where applications like, web browsers and email clients live. So a Layer 7 attack, it targets those applications directly, trying to exploit vulnerabilities in the software itself.
So it's like hacking the front door of the building instead of trying to, tunnel through the foundation.
That's a great way to put it. And to protect against those types of attacks, the answer suggests using a web application firewall, or WAFF. It's specifically designed to analyze traffic at that application layer and block anything suspicious.
So it's like having a security guard stationed at the front door of your web application,
That's right.
Screening visitors and making sure only the good guys get in.
Exactly. It's a crucial layer of defense for any organization using those SaaS applications.
Question 40 addresses vulnerabilities in software development. An organization CISO has examined statistics and metrics and has determined that the organization's software development organization is producing a growing number of serious security vulnerabilities. What new control would be most effective at ensuring that production systems are free of these vulnerabilities?
This goes back to the idea of shifting left that we discussed earlier. Instead of trying to find and fix vulnerabilities after the software is already deployed, the answer suggests integrating security checks directly into the build process. By running a security scan during that build and requiring that, no critical or high-level vulnerabilities exist in that final release, you can catch those problems early on.
So it's about stopping those vulnerabilities from ever making it into production in the first place, rather than playing whack-a-mole trying to fix them after they've already caused problems.
Exactly. It's a much more efficient and effective approach to, secure software development.
Okay, question 41 asks about policy. How does an acceptable use policy differ from an information security policy? What's the difference between these two?
The answer highlights the focus of each policy. An acceptable use policy, it's all about setting clear expectations for how employees are allowed to use company resources. It covers things like internet usage, email, social media, and personal devices.
So it's about setting those ground rules for behavior, right?
Yeah.
Making sure everyone understands what's okay and what's not okay when using those company resources.
Exactly. An information security policy, on the other hand, is much broader in scope. It lays out all the rules and regulations for cybersecurity across the entire organization. It covers everything from password management to data encryption to, incident response.
So the acceptable use policy is like a subset of that information security policy,
Yeah.
focusing specifically on user behavior.
Exactly. They work together to create a comprehensive framework for managing those cybersecurity risks.
Question 42 takes us into the world of incident response. Revila, a new CISO in a healthcare organization, is reviewing incident response records from the past several years. Revila has determined that minor incidents were managed with too much rigor and complexity, while major incidents weren't dealt with thoroughly enough. What might be the cause of this? It seems like a bit of a mismatch in that response effort.
It does. And the answer points to a common problem: the lack of a tiered incident response plan. Imagine if a hospital, right, treated every patient who walked through the door as if they were having a heart attack. You'd quickly overwhelm that system and run out of resources for those who truly need immediate attention.
So it's about having a plan that scales to the severity of the incident, ensuring that we're not overreacting to minor issues while also being prepared to, handle those major events effectively.
Perfectly. It's about matching the response to the level of risk, ensuring that we're using our resources wisely and responding appropriately to each situation.
Okay, question 43 asks about incident response plan templates. Which of the following is not a valid objection for using incident response plan templates to serve as an organization's security incident response plan? So what's the catch with using a pre-made plan?
Templates can be a good starting point, but they often lack the specifics needed to make them truly effective. The answer highlights that these templates, they won't include details about your organization's unique business processes and, technology. It's like trying to use a generic recipe for a cake, right? It might give you those basic ingredients, but it won't account for your specific oven temperature or the altitude where you live.
So while templates can provide a helpful framework, they really need to be customized to fit the organization's specific needs and context.
Exactly. A cookie-cutter approach to incident response planning is rarely effective. You need a plan that reflects, your unique risks and resources.
Question 44 explores the world of security information and event management. CISM. Why would an organization consider developing alerts on its security information and event management system, as opposed to using its existing daily log review procedure? Why bother with CISM alerts when we're already, reviewing logs?
The answer highlights the importance of real-time monitoring. Instead of waiting for a daily log review, which might be too late to stop an attack in progress, CISM alerts can notify you of suspicious activity as it's happening. This allows you to respond, much more quickly and effectively.
So it's like having a security camera system that alerts you immediately when someone trips a motion sensor, rather than waiting until the next day to review the footage.
Exactly. It's about moving from a reactive approach to a proactive one, where you're detecting and responding to threats as they emerge.
Question 45 asks about documentation. The purpose of documenting the steps taken during the response to an actual security incident includes all of the following except which one. So why bother writing all this down after the fact?
Documenting your incident response, it's not about determining whether the organization recovered from the incident. It's about learning from what happened and, improving your processes for the future. It's like writing a post-mortem report after a project, right? You're trying to identify what went well, what could have been done better, and how to avoid similar problems in the future.
So, we want to document what happened, how we responded, and whether we followed those procedures. The focus is on continuous improvement, not just checking a box to say we recovered.
Exactly. Incident response documentation is a valuable tool for learning and growth.
Question 46 presents a challenging scenario. While responding to a security incident, the person acting as the incident commander is unable to notify a particular executive in an escalation procedure. What should the incident responder do next? What happens when the chain of command breaks down?
The answer emphasizes the importance of having, clear escalation procedures. If one person is unavailable, the incident responder should immediately notify the next person in that escalation chain. It's like having a designated backup pilot on an airplane. You need someone ready to step in if the captain is incapacitated.
So it's about ensuring that there's always a clear path for communication and decision-making, even in those high-pressure situations.
Exactly. You can't afford to have any ambiguity or confusion during an incident. Everyone needs to know who to contact and what steps to take.
Question 47 highlights the importance of practice. Why should incident responders participate in incident response tabletop exercises? Why bother with simulations when we can just, learn from those real incidents?
Tabletop exercises allow incident responders to practice their skills and test their plans in a safe and controlled environment. It's like running those fire drills, right? You're not waiting for a real fire to figure out how to use the extinguisher or find the nearest exit. By practicing those scenarios in advance, you can build muscle memory and be better prepared to handle the real thing.
So it's about rehearsing those responses, working through those different scenarios, identifying gaps in the plan, and building confidence in the team's ability to handle, a real incident.
Exactly. Tabletop exercises are a valuable tool for building those incident response capabilities and improving the organization's, overall resilience.
Question 48 asks a similar question, but with a slightly different angle. Why should incident responders be asked to review incident response procedures? Why not just give them the plan and let them follow it when the time comes?
Because the people on those front lines, they often have the best insights into what works and what doesn't. By asking incident responders to review those procedures, you can get valuable feedback and identify, areas for improvement. It's like asking soldiers to review their battle plans after a mission. They can provide those firsthand perspectives that wouldn't be available from someone, sitting in a headquarters.
So it's about getting input from those who will actually be executing the plan, right?
Yeah.
Ensuring that it's practical, it's clear, and it reflects the realities of incident response.
Exactly. Incident response procedures should be those living documents that are constantly evolving based on, lessons learned and feedback from the field.
Question 49 takes us back to PCI DSS. Why would PCI DSS requirements require organizations to put emergency contact information for card brands in their incident response plans?
This one is pretty straightforward. It's a mandatory requirement for compliance with PCI DSS. Requirement 12.9.1 specifically mandates that organizations have that contact information readily available in case of a security incident involving cardholder data.
So it's not just a best practice, it's a must-do for any organization handling that sensitive payment information.
Exactly. It underscores the importance of being prepared and having those communication channels established in advance.
And finally, question 50 asks about post-incident review. The purpose of a post-incident review of a security incident includes all of the following except which one? What are we trying to achieve with this review?
The answer is insightful. The primary purpose of a post-incident review, it's not to determine the motivation of the attacker. It's about understanding what happened, how it happened, and how to prevent it from happening again.
So while it might be tempting to try and get inside the head of that attacker, the real value lies in identifying those actionable insights that can help us improve our defenses.
Exactly. Post-incident review is a crucial step in the continuous improvement process for cybersecurity. It's about turning those incidents into learning opportunities so we can strengthen our security posture over time. It's like they say, sometimes you have to take a step back to really see the bigger picture. And speaking of stepping back, our final question for this deep dive, question 51, takes us to the intersection of, incident response and disaster recovery. It asks, James, the CISO in an organization has reviewed the organization's incident response plans and disaster recovery plans and has determined that incident response plans do not include any provisions should a security incident occur during a declared disaster of the organization. What happens when you're already dealing with, a major disruption and then, bam, a security incident hits on top of that?
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for chaos. What's the solution?
The answer here emphasizes that these two plans, incident response and disaster recovery, they shouldn't be siloed. James needs to bring those teams together to make sure that incident response plan includes specific procedures for handling those security incidents during, an emergency. Imagine a hurricane hits, right, and knocks out power to a hospital. Now, on top of that, their systems get hit with ransomware. They need to be prepared to handle both those situations simultaneously.
So it's about recognizing that a security incident could make a disaster even worse and vice versa.
Right.
The plans need to work together, seamlessly.
Exactly. You need a coordinated approach to handle those complex scenarios effectively. Cybersecurity and disaster recovery, they go hand in hand.
Well, wow, we covered a lot of ground today, from high-level governance and risk management to the nitty-gritty of vulnerability scanning and incident response. What stood out to you from this deep dive into this CF1 practice test?
For me, it really reinforced the importance of, a holistic approach to cybersecurity. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people, the processes, and creating that culture of security awareness that permeates the entire organization.
Absolutely. It's about weaving security into the fabric of the organization. From the boardroom to the development team to every single employee, everyone really has a role to play.
And on that note, I'd like to leave you with a final thought. We've been talking about, cybersecurity at the organizational level, but these principles apply to our personal lives as well. Think about your own digital life, your online banking, your social media accounts, your personal files. What are your most valuable, digital assets? And what steps are you taking to protect them?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in those complexities of enterprise cybersecurity, but we all have a responsibility to, protect ourselves online.
Absolutely. We live in a digital world, and it's more important than ever to be aware of the risks and take steps to, mitigate them.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cybersecurity. We hope you learned something new, gained some valuable insights, and are feeling a little more, empowered to navigate this complex and ever-changing world.
And remember, stay curious. The more you learn about cybersecurity, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself, your data, and your organization.
Until next time, stay safe out there.